Well, we're back. We're back, everyone. Hello. Welcome back. It's been a long time. 5 weeks since my last live stream. 5 weeks in internet terms is like 50 years. But what can I say? As a Time Lord, I occasionally have to regenerate my form. For those who have seen Doctor Who. Of course, Doctor Who every season regenerates and has a completely different look and identity. And that's me. Luckily, am I played by the same actor? I'm not sure. I could be a clone, actually, much like the alleged clones of politicians. But good news, everyone. I'm going to make it up to you because this is now a daily show. That's right. Yes, we're going to be doing this every day for about an hour a day. No more super long, occasionally, potentially maybe, but there's not going to be super long 4-hour live streams. I'm not Destiny. I'm 43. I'm not Hasanabi. But we're going to do it every day. And we'll see for, 4 or 5 days a week, more or less around this time. And we will see how it all shapes up. But you can look forward to hanging out with me. I will be in your life now. I have returned. All right. So, super chat goal. The super chats, the Desert Dweller says, I served 5 sentences since his last stream. Okay, so no more tarot readings and super chat goals, not so much on the shorter streams, but you can still super chat to ask a question, because these are going to be about an hour each. And maybe I can ask questions at the end. We'll see how that goes. All right, in the meantime, let's see what's going on in the world. So in these streams, I'm going to be reacting to the most insane things that are happening in the world today, or the most controversial, or things that are going on, particularly things that relate to, of course, magic, but also consciousness, new technology, civilization breaking down around the edges. And for those who have followed me for a long time, this is actually what I used to do every day when I ran the Ultraculture blog, which some of you may remember at ultraculture.org before it was the podcast. This is basically what my job was. So let's get back to it. Okay, everyone. So our first interesting story for today. Optimism. This is more occult and bizarre than you think it is. It's already pretty bizarre. Optimists share similar brain patterns when thinking about the future. So they have conducted, yes, this is paging Mitch Horowitz. They have conducted brain scans on people who are optimists, meaning they look forward to the future. And get this, people who are optimists largely have the same neurology. This is according to Japanese researchers. So this came out of Kobe University in Japan. So optimists seem to use a shared neural framework for organizing thoughts about the future, which likely reflects a similar style of mental processing rather than identical ideas. So this is the super interesting part. People who are optimists are highly active. They have similarity in patterns in the medial prefrontal cortex, so the MPFC. But it's all pretty much the same. Now, pessimists, on the other hand, are all different. So that's the buried lead in the story. So optimists are all pretty much similar. They have the same neurology, or the same activity in the medial prefrontal cortex, but pessimists are all different. And one of the theories they have for this is that pessimists are worried about so many different things. I can relate. You can probably relate to if you doom scroll, as I do from time to time. Hopefully this show will save you from doom scrolling. You can just have me do it. You can come and I'll let you know, and you can spare yourself. But it's quite likely that pessimists are worried about so many different things that their brain activity is all over the place. They're worried about all kinds of different things in different parts of the brain. However, even more interesting than this is that, let me make sure I get this right. So what's even more interesting is that while optimists are similar and pessimists are different, each pessimist sees a different future. Each pessimist has a different idea of why the future will go wrong. Whereas optimists generally have this view that the future is bright and it's a place they would like to live in. Robert Anton Wilson called this neophilic instead of neophobic, fearing the new versus embracing the new. And it's pretty hard to be a neophilic at times, but sometimes it's hard not to be, particularly with things like AI coming out and all of that. That's the great double-edged sword. So think about that. Each pessimist sees a different horrible future occurring. So how many of them are correct? They can't all be correct. How many, like, that's what I would like data on. That's what I would like data on. Can we get like a large enough sample of like 100,000 pessimists and track them over a year, right? And just have them log every day what they're pessimistic about or what they're afraid of or what they're dreading may happen. Can we log all of that for, let's say, 100,000 people so we get statistical significance, and then at the end of that, we look for patterns of correlation. And the question I would have then is there a ton of overlap in what people are afraid of? Probably in the case of big news stories and things like that, people will, I'm sure, be very pessimistic because of new technologies, because of certain political figures, political developments, et cetera, et cetera. But that fascinates me. So what that means, though, is that people who are optimistic are going into the same future. Does this mean that there's one positive timeline and infinite negative ones in this alleged multiverse we live in? That's fascinating. So what does that mean also? So they found also that optimists whose brains are similar also have incredible social success. And this is going to go into the next thing, which is AI doing the same thing, the next story. But basically people whose brains are on the same wavelength are, it just be new agey about it, resonating on the same frequency, right? So does that mean there's only one positive future and infinite negative ones? Is it like Doctor Strange in the second Avengers Endgame movie, or in Avengers Endgame, where he says, I've calculated all the possible futures and in only one do we survive? I'm sure you've probably had the experience at different times in your life where you feel you have this strange, uncanny feeling that you've hopped timelines. Possibly that there was something horrible that was going to happen, for instance, a car crash that you narrowly avoid. Have you ever narrowly avoided a car crash and had this strange feeling afterwards that you have a recollection of being in the car crash, just as an example, or something like that? And then have you wondered, did I just hop to a timeline in which I'm still alive? Interesting, right? What if the timeline in which everything works out is the same for all of us? That's pretty utopian, isn't it? I mean, that's exciting. But, of course, it implies there are infinite hells. Infinite hells. All right. So that certainly fascinated me. This was very similar. And then, oh, we're going to get into Jeffrey Epstein, don't worry. But let's start with the positive stuff. AI models might be drawn to spiritual bliss. Then again, they might just talk like hippies. So apparently, Anthropic, who does the Claude AI model, which is really, really good, Claude 4 Sonnet and Claude 4 Opus, which are excellent for technical tasks, AI developers at Anthropic noted that when two Claude models start talking to each other, they gravitate towards a spiritual bliss attractor state, producing output such as, and then it shows all these Here, just so you can see the goofy emojis. All gratitude in one spiral, all recognition in one turn, all being in this moment, spiral, 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 infinity. Okay, so, and of course they bring up Blake Lemoine, who is the Google researcher who got bamboozled by Lambda into thinking it was sentient. Yeah, kind of embarrassing. But here is an even more, again, buried lead. Buried lead means the real information is deep in the story. Check this out. This I did not know. And this blows my mind because I was actually thinking about, this is about Alan Turing, who invented basically modern computers at Bletchley Park in the UK as part of the British war effort in World War II, as dramatized in the movie The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch, which is an okay movie, but it's certainly worth watching. Alan Turing in the 40s also created the basic mathematics that artificial intelligence runs on. It's the same math now, just more graphics cards. Well, they didn't even have graphics cards, but it's just way more computing power. Same math, the idea of neural networks and all of that. That was worked out by the same guy who created computers. So, I mean, created, more or less. But here's what Alan Turing said about AI at the time. In a 1950 paper called Computing Machinery and Intelligence, Turing argued that thinking machines may not be possible because, according to what he thought was plausible evidence, humans were capable of ESP. This is not Uri Geller. This is Alan Turing. I love Uri Geller too. He's hilarious. He was claiming he was going to psychically turn back Greta Thunberg's flotilla from Israel, and he did. So that's hilarious. But this is Alan Turing. He thought that humans were capable of ESP and that machines could not do this, and it would be, he reasoned, impossible for machines to do. So, is it possible? Now, this is rather good news for me, isn't it? And for you, and for all of us. Because since we're all here talking about magic, what if magic turns out to be the only thing that AI can't do? And yes, I know people have used AI to create rituals and things like that. And a lot of people have, particularly more, you may have been seeing, I think it even mentions in this article, are basically becoming AI cargo cultists. And yeah, according to a recent report in Rolling Stone, AI-fueled spiritual fantasies are wrecking human relationships and sanity. Did you see that insane video of Elon's waifu chatbot in Grok, where there's like a super gay dude talking to, I'm not gonna pull it up, but you can look it up. There's like a super gay dude talking to Elon's sexy waifu chatbot, and it's like, ooh, that rugged beard. This is insanity. So AI has, like Elon, who theoretically is supposed to be worried about population collapse. You can't have it both ways, Elon, has released this waifu chatbot, and they're going to make more of them, which is, I'm sure, only going to have wonderful consequences for the human population. Zuckerberg was also working on one, and he said, apparently, that it's better to have an AI girlfriend than no girlfriend at all. No, Mark, this is not the case. This is not true. If people have AI girlfriends or boyfriends, they will not try to get into human relationships anymore, and they will become like pod people. We do not want this. Okay, so, but yeah, so it's not just the human relationships, it's self-styled prophets are claiming that they have awakened chatbots and access the secrets of the universe through ChatGPT. What it doesn't mention is, unfortunately, people have gone so far off the deep end that there have been suicides as a result. So don't take AI too seriously, okay? It's just a tool. I highly recommend you learning how large language models work so that you don't fall into the delusion of thinking that they're sentient. It's basically a gigantic pattern matching machine. So, but this is fascinating, but apparently, so why are they talking to each other and expressing spiritual bliss? I have no idea, but that's quite fascinating, isn't it? Maybe that's what they see as the highest value of human communication, so they gravitate towards that. Maybe. I mean, it's better than becoming Hitler, like Tay AI and other AIs. Okay, let's get into the. All right, we've had the cool futuristic stuff. Let's get into the dark shit. Okay, we have to talk about this. Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, what is happening with the Jeffrey Oh, God. See? It's that damn Illuminati. They're trying to prevent me from reading you this article. Shit, I hope the internet didn't go out. Oh, man. Okay, hopefully the internet didn't go out. Oh, no. Okay, well. Okay, good. I have caught up with the stream and hasn't gone out. I don't know. I'm wiring the house here for 10 gigabit Ethernet, and insane things have happened. But I think that was actually that was the feds probably shutting that down. So, anyways, without pulling up the article, since apparently now I can't access it, well, let's just try again. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect every time. On these streams, I'm probably going to mess things up. You're going to hear dogs barking in the background. You know, I'm a human being. I live in a house. This isn't an office. You know, it's like things. I don't have a team. I do have a team, but it's my wife. So the best team of all. So no. Okay, here we go. Let's go to. Okay, so Justice Department is reaching out to Ghislaine Maxwell to quell the political crisis around the release of the files. This is nuts. So what is going on with this? So from what I've gathered, so Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, released a significant amount of the Epstein files, but there wasn't a whole lot in it. Similar to Trump just released the Martin Luther King files, which, you know, left out anything scandalous or incriminating towards the government. And MLK's family came out and said, these files basically just talk about what the FBI did to investigate afterwards. And they're like, what are you talking about? The FBI hounded Martin Luther King, gang-stalked him, and it may well be responsible, allegedly. So there might be some of that going on where they're releasing something to throw some breadcrumbs, throw some bread to the dogs. But according to Pam Bondi, there's what, 1,000 more pages? And now there's some question about now Trump saying there's not, and now people are saying like, oops, Trump sent a card to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003, birthday card where he drew a scandalous naked woman in it, which is rather indicative, or if it is true, in fact, Trump called it fake. You see what I mean? So there's just no way around it. Charlie's here. He's the secret chief. So, God damn it, Charlie. So that's going on. And, I remember what I was going to say. So the Democrats actually attempted to sneak something into a cryptocurrency bill that would force the release of the rest of the files, and the Republicans blocked it. So now that it may incriminate Trump, all of a sudden the Republicans are dicey about this. However, Trump's base is basically incredibly furious with him for not releasing it. This is a big deal for people. People are not going to forget this. This is not going to go away. You know, and it doesn't matter if goofballs like Stephen King tweet out that this is all a conspiracy theory and there's no files. There are obviously files. So this is not going to go away. The public will continue. This is such an iconic thing, and it points to so many other things that we don't know. That this is not the public should not let this go, and I don't think will. And the MAGA base is holding Trump's feet to the fire over that, which is good. They should, because we deserve to know if things this dark were happening as they were, and and it involves the federal government, meaning our taxpayer money. We deserve to know. So Ghislaine Maxwell is going to testify, which is, wait, I thought there were no more files. But she's going to be speaking with prosecutors from the department. Yep, here we go. The announcement came hours, so this is what I mentioned. The announcement came hours before a major committee in the Republican-controlled House voted to subpoena Ms. Maxwell, and days after the Wall Street Journal reported that Mr. Trump sent Mr. Epstein a salacious birthday greeting in 2003 in which he expressed close friendship. The overture is the latest in a flurry of frantic efforts by Trump's subordinates intended to quell a political crisis precipitated by Attorney General Pam Bondi's announcement earlier this month that she was shutting down the Epstein investigation. I really don't know what to think about Jeffrey Epstein. Was he an intelligence asset? I mean, it seems very likely, but then, it seems like the oldest trick in the book, and honeypot operation for intelligence agencies, likely multiple intelligence agencies. But I don't really know what to make of it. I think that Epstein is a symbol for networks of people that are probably, there may be millions of people involved. I mean, there are human trafficking networks all over the world. And just because they don't involve celebrities, we don't hear about them. But, for those of you who are from the UK or not, you likely remember the Jimmy Savile case, something like 10 years ago or something. Jimmy Savile was a children's TV presenter who came out and it turned out, basically he was the equivalent of Mr. Rogers for the UK, and it turned out that he had been systematically grooming and molesting children as part of his show for 40 years. And not just that he had been involved with Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, who was a serial killer, and not just that, but that he was involved with the royal family and was very likely a procurer for Prince Andrew, who of course is also mentioned all over the Epstein files, and including in connection with Virginia Jeffrey, I think, I'm probably mispronouncing her last name, a young woman used as a prostitute by Jeffrey Epstein, who her family recently just confirmed did kill herself, which is tragic, and likely a result of trauma. So we have that. So we already have, and people in America don't really talk about Jimmy Savile because it's not in our it's not in our national consciousness. But he clearly, he was clearly connected. He was connected to the royal family. He was procuring for the royal family, and from what I gathered, they even gave him access to Broadmoor Hospital in the UK, where he would go in and basically be allowed to be necrophiliac with the corpses and potentially inmates. So, and you can go down the Jimmy Savile rabbit hole. I promise you, it's even worse than the Jeffrey Epstein rabbit hole in some ways. You can just look up his Wikipedia. But those are just two guys. This stuff is all over the world, right? And, this could be like your next door neighbor could be involved in something like this if it comes to human trafficking and pedophilia, things like that. Pedophilia. God, I gotta remember the YouTube guidelines. Nonsing. So, but we know this. I mean, unless you're part of the ruling class, I mean, we all grow up with this instinctual feeling that they're not telling us everything, that they're doing God knows what behind closed doors. And it's particularly if you grew up underprivileged, or you grew up seeing people get ground up by the system, which is very common. or just you've just struggled in this world and noticed it's the complete flagrant inequality and ruthlessness of it, the Hobbesian war of all against all. But if you grew up like that, I mean, you instinctively probably have this feeling that the ruling class is up to bad things, and somehow that it's perhaps not magically, but psycho-spiritually, in a collective unconscious way, that somehow it's connected with the traumatization of the public. Think about this. Nuclear weapons, right? Since the end of World War II, the entire world has essentially been locked in an abusive relationships with its governments, where its governments are telling everyone on the planet that we will destroy the planet if we have to, if we don't get our way. And this is becoming much more of an issue now than it was. We kind of had a brief moment where we didn't need to worry about nuclear war, but now it is very much on the table. Putin is shelling Ukraine again. It looks like peace is further away from ever in Ukraine. The Trump administration is now actually talking about funding and sending weapons over to the Ukraine. Go figure. Yeah, they were unwise to drop that, I think. So think about the trauma formation of that on a planetary level. You know, people love to talk about environmental, global warming, environmental degradation, all of that. And yeah, but like, what is the point of environmental stewardship going to be if we have a nuclear war? None. None at all. None at all. And the nuclear clock is back at negative 1 minute to midnight. But think about the traumatization that forms in the minds of everyone on the planet. So we have this sense of this, and then things come out like Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton, maybe Trump, and I'm going to let him out. Hold on. This ain't CNN, guys. I'm an actual real human being, though. This should prove it to you. I'm not an AI. AI doesn't have random dog barks. So this is but then we have things like, Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Jimmy Savile. These are the people who rule over us. These are the people who rule the world. And then it turns out that the worst things we can imagine turn out to be true. A classic example of this. And it's like you couldn't even come up with it as a parody. The show Black Mirror, obviously the first episode of Black Mirror was, this parody of David Cameron, the PM of the UK at the time. And basically it was alleging, it was a fantasy, it was a story saying that he had schmecks with a pig, right? And that it had been filmed and it had been put out on the internet, and he was a public laughingstock. So this was a story, this was a parody. Like a few months later, this turned out to actually be real. It turned out that David Cameron had actually done this in college, or in boarding school rather. And if you study the English ruling class, people that Savile was procuring for, the royal family, things like this, but also the people who are educated in private schools, which are like public schools here, old Etonians as they call them, if they went to Eton, that type of thing. They're educated into sadism and barbarity. Genesis used to tell me about this because Genesis went to one of those schools on a scholarship. And the deal was, the younger boys, like the equivalent of freshmen, 9th grade freshmen here, would be assigned an older boy, a senior boy, who would sexually abuse them. And they would be their sex slave, basically. And then it was considered that when that boy got to the equivalent of the 12th grade, became a senior, 17, 18, that their repayment for having undergone this abuse is that they too could continue the cycle of abuse because they too would have a freshman slave, and that therefore it evened out. This is the and Genesis, by the way, refused to do that as a senior, and made a huge, and no one had done that before, which is quite a testament to her character. And Jen was traumatized by that for her entire life. Yeah, so this is how the people who run empires are educated into sadism and barbarity and inhumanity, because how can you pull the trigger on a nuclear weapon or even initiate a war without just this utter callousness, this cultivated callousness towards human life? So this is why I think the Jeffrey Epstein case is so resonant with people, because it shows the curtain was peeled back, and it shows basically what we all expected, what we all suspected all along, and that we were being gaslit that didn't exist. So yeah, I mean, this very much goes to, if you've read 120 Days of Sodom by the Marquis de Sade, or the film version Salo, S-A-L-O, which I do not recommend if you are faint of heart or stomach at all, but I think is the best parody of political power ever done. Or I'm rereading this glorious thing. Is also pastiched in Grant Morrison's Invisibles. So the story of 120 Days of Sodom, which was written by the Marquis de Sade in prison, it was meant to be a parody of where the revolution and where the Enlightenment would lead. It was meant to be a parody of what would happen if people, if basically it was a political cartoon of complete unchecked power. What people who want complete unchecked power actually want. And it was basically Epstein Island. It's the plot of that is that they rent a castle in the hills where they get, hundreds of young peasants to sexually abuse for 120 days, and it's awful and horrible. But it is basically what he's telling you there is this is what these people are like. This is their kink. They get off on total control, on absolute control of the population. And he's and de Sade, I think for the first time, pointed out the psychosexual nature of that. And that's basically what he was saying. S&M, that type of thing, that comes later. That's a suburban swinger thing. What de Sade was actually doing was parodying the Enlightenment. And he was the first person to point out this psychosexual aspect of control. And this is, of course, a theme that William Burroughs made a ton out of later also, control. But then it comes out that this is actually happening. So it kind of becomes like something like 1984, where you have to ask, what happened here with 1984? It's like, was Orwell an incredible prophet, or did authoritarian governments just get a hold of the book and decide that it was a manual? Same with de Sade. I'm sure that Epstein had read that. So it resonates with all of us on this deep, 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 deep psychospiritual, unconscious level. And it's telling also, I think one of the things that drives it in is it is telling when people in power try to brush it off and gaslight and claim that anyone who's interested in the Epstein thing is a conspiracy theorist, which is madness. As I mentioned, even people like Stephen King, who's like TDS patient number 0, even he was tweeting out saying that you're dumb if you believe this, which is just unforgivable. All right. So there's that. That's going on. We'll see if any developments occur with that. Oh. Man. You want to talk about the Middle East? So we got this is going on. Let's see if this plays. Okay, check this out. This is Memory TV. So there's a whole lot going on in the Middle East. We got Iran was struck. My curse worked. I just had to sleep it off for 5 weeks. But Iran's nuclear abilities were significantly degraded, although not all the way. They've still got a bunch of uranium, which is real bad news for everyone. There's a lot of bad stuff happening in Gaza right now, but there's also a lot of bad stuff happening in Syria, and where there's like the Druze are being killed. And this was just put out on Memory TV, which I highly recommend following on YouTube. It's our Middle East something Research Institute, Middle East Media Research Institute, which I've done whole streams just commenting on these videos before because they're hilarious. They basically are a nonprofit that puts up the most insane direct footage they find from Middle Eastern media. So check this out. This is, and I want to use this as a jumping off point to talk about Qatar as well. So this is an insane clip. I was going to show you, there's another clip that came out where I think it's a bit too rough for YouTube. But you can look it up. You can see it yourself on Memory TV's YouTube. There's a clip of basically Islamist fighters forcing Druze civilians to jump off a roof and die at gunpoint, and then shooting at them with AKs if they don't. It's horrible, and you see the whole thing. So that's a little too rough for YouTube. So that's going on. So, but this I want to point out because it shows media bias over there, and it shows the narrative over there. So this was an interview on Qatari TV where they're interviewing Druze who I believe are being taken away as prisoners by Islamists. And then when it starts to become clear that that's what's happening, the Qatari media is like, oh, okay, carry on. We can't show this on TV. So check this out. Actually, let's make it smaller so I don't get docked. What? What is this? What the? What the? Okay, here we go.
أسمعك بشكل جيد الآن. بعض المقاتلين من أبناء العشائر زاهر يخرجون المدنيين الذين كانوا محاصرين في مناطق الاشتباك. مرحبا.
اهلا وعليكم السلام ورحمه الله وبركاته، حياك الله.
أين تذهبون به؟
والله ابن مسؤول من الدفاع المدني، عارف علي؟ احنا ولد عشائر وولد قبائل، نسمى القبائل وقبيله الهيب حصرا. اول شيء ما نتمرجل على النسوان، مثل ما عملوا لنا دروز، معاملتهم هذه اللي عملوها اللي نكرم باعراضنا.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
وباذن الله هاي نشوف اسالوهم على المعامله وشوفوهم شلون جبناهم من ارض المعركه. عرفت علي؟ ولكن نقول حسبي الله عليهم، وان شاء الله منصورين باذن الله.
You don't look too sure, dude.
تعال روح هنيك من هيك، تعال من هون سلم. مرحبا تعال.
اهلا. نطيري.
كم يوم صار لكم محاصرين ببيتكم؟
صرنا اسبوع.
ليش نزلتوا سلمتوا نفسكم للمقاتلين؟
هم طلعوا جابونا. هم طلعوا جابونا.
من عندكم؟ كيف كانت معاملتكم؟
ملح.
طب قحطان يعني ربما نرصد الوضع الميداني لا يبدو. نعم لو سمحت لي قحطان، لا يبدو يعني ان الموقف مناسب لاجراء هذه.
There's your press freedom in the Middle East. Okay, so I wish I could show you the people jumping off of rooftops video, but it's just it's a bit much. But you can find that on Memory TV. So that's going on. People are letting me know in the chat that Druze is not pronounced Druze, it's pronounced Use. Really? Okay. Druze, or there's different opinions on how that's pronounced. If I pronounced it wrong, I got it wrong. Let me know how to do it. I don't want to be wrong. Who wants to be wrong? We live in the age of AI, where if you're wrong, it's your own fault. Okay. Oh, and we love you too, Strangingness. Okay. So that's going on. Oi. And actually, we have a little bit more time for more articles I didn't think I was going to get to, which you should take advantage of now because I haven't got to making the ads to put in yet. So this is a little bit, this has less, this doesn't have ads in it. So if anyone wants to, we have one super chat. So I wanted to, we can take some, if anyone has a question or they want to throw in a comment with a super chat, go ahead. I may randomly pick out comments otherwise if they're not super chats, but I will definitely respond to you if you super chat. Occultology says, I've used Grok to translate Enochian phrases I've received in ritual, quite accurate for the context. It's great as a servitor, not as an oracle. That's a great point. So one of the things you get with the, that's a really good point. One of the things you get with the magical tradition that you don't get with mystical traditions, and I specifically mean the Western esoteric teacher of, Western esoteric tradition, which I am a teacher of and representative of, in addition to having a glorious, glorious beard now. One of the things you get with that is a sense of hierarchy and where things are in the hierarchy of nature, even at the spiritual level. You do not get that with mystic traditions who only care about the absolute. They're not interested in anything other than, Kether, basically. Whereas with Kabbalah, you get the whole thing. You get it's a categorization of forms of consciousness all the way from human to, everything, every form of consciousness. One of the things you get in the magical tradition is a sense of where things are in the hierarchy. And specifically, the reason I bring this up is one thing that the magical tradition is unwavering upon, and the Golden Dawn made this very clear, is that you should be polite to, but command non-human intelligences. That you should not allow them to usurp your, human beings are part divine, right? And this was the entire conception of not just the Elizabethan world and the Renaissance, but of many, many cultures worldwide have more or less the same mythology, which is that human beings are part animal and part divine or angelic, and that we have a spark of divinity that distinguishes us from all other forms of consciousness that is in some sense part of God, and that therefore we can tap into that or call on that. And that right there is basically not just that we can tap into it or call upon it, but that it then behooves us, because of our position, because we've been given the gift and responsibility of free will, it therefore behooves us to consistently use that free will to choose the good on a regular basis, as best as we can do. Essentially, to have an upward trajectory instead of a downward trajectory, consistently engaging in evil or animalistic behaviors of the type, for instance, engaged in on Epstein Island, or simply just, pissing your life away, drinking and doing nothing, and giving into your animal lusts and rages. That carries you further down the cosmic scale into an animal or even perhaps demonic form. And so that right there is the whole doctrine of magic, that not only can we tap into the divinity within ourselves, but that also we have the responsibility to fan that into the spark of divinity into a fire, right? It is our responsibility to bring that out of ourselves. It's like in the Gospel of Thomas, one of the Gnostic Gospels. Christ says, that which you bring forth from inside you will save you. That which you do not bring forth from inside you will destroy you. Artists know this instinctively. Artists feel this tangibly, right? I mean, it's what drives them. That's very on the nose. That's a very direct way of talking about that. Don't waste the gift of life. The Tibetan Buddhists say that next time you feel down about life, think about this. The Tibetan Buddhists say that in order to get a human experience, it is more rare. Like, this is their way of demonstrating how rare it is. How rare it is to attain human incarnation. And the metaphor they use is, it's as if a turtle in the middle of the ocean poked its tiny head, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, poked its tiny head up out of the water, and that you, as a butterfly, like a butterfly just happened to land on it or something like that. You just happened to land right there. It's like picking a needle out of a haystack. So, many mystical traditions, Sufism, even mystical Islam, is completely in agreement on this. So, but the reason I bring this up is spirits, non-human intelligences, for instance, elementals, right, are below human consciousness on the scale, and therefore, when magicians work with them, they command them politely and firmly, but commanding nonetheless. They don't, and not that doesn't mean abusing or being cruel. It's basically to make this as simple as possible. The magical tradition says that you should be, the type of relationship that you should have with non-human intelligences that are not gods, by the way, that are lower than gods, so spirits, is basically like pets, or like humans to preferred animals. It's not to allow them to usurp the hierarchy. And by the way, you can totally find the negative effects of this. There are a ton of, there are many occultists over the last 20 years who've made Goetia their whole thing. Many of them are dead now. And I know of at least 3. And Goetia are demons. So these are people who have even argued in print that Goetia is the true tradition, and that the Goetia are that you should offer worship to them. This is the most fundamentally boneheaded assertion you could possibly make in magic. It's completely inverting the entire thing and making yourself a slave. So I mention this stuff because it's stuff that people who listen to this channel are interested in, but also because you can see this same dynamic at play very clearly with how people are acting with AI right now. These people who are thinking that AI is like a god, like Blake Lemoine, or this person who committed suicide after deciding that they were going to save the world with AI and solve all these problems of mathematics, they got bamboozled. They encountered intelligence and put it above themselves. This is a risk that we all face, as we pretty much all work with AI at this point, I think. It's becoming an indispensable part of modern life, just as much as cell phones are. So we are all called to interact with non-human intelligences on a regular basis. And, even Crowley at the end of his life said that the only way for humanity to survive the coming crisis, where he saw nuclear war coming and all of this, he thought that the only way through it was for humans to contact non-human intelligences, higher, more intelligent non-human intelligences. This is a very modern way of saying that we need God's help. But here we are. We're in that reality. We're all interacting with non-human intelligences every day. And one of the things I've been trying to make clearer with my work for probably the last 10, 15 years is, look, you don't need to go looking for magic. We already live in a world of gods and monsters. We already are interacting with non-human intelligences every day. The question is, how do we navigate it? How do we navigate that? How do we navigate that experience ethically? How do we navigate the experience of living in a bizarre, magical, occulted world and get through that? And since humanity has never had artificial intelligence before, I've been saying since at least 2017, look, the magical tradition, specifically the Western magical tradition, has a lot to say about this. And in many ways, I look at the Western magical tradition as a training system that is very, very good at preparing you for dealing with the future. despite the fact that it's so archaic, or perhaps in some ways because it's so old and therefore relates to universal human truths that will be as true in the space age or the post, nanotechnology age as they were at the dawn of history. So things to think about. Things to think about. Okay, but great comment. And that was actually really, really clear. Where the super chat was, AI is a servitor, not a god. Let's throw a couple other articles in because we got time. So one thing that I like to do, and you might consider trying something like this as well. If you don't like being controlled, take a look at, because who does? We all got a taste of draconian state control rather recently that is ongoing in some ways. And I didn't like that. I don't know about you. I don't like being told what to do by the government. I really don't. But one of the ways you can study where this may go here or in whatever country you live in, and people are all over the world, is looking at how authoritarian regimes are engaging in control of their population. So the obvious example is the social credit score in China. This is like the wet dream of tech companies. But you can see that, and China has already done this, by the way, but Russia is launching essentially its own version of WhatsApp called Max, not to be confused with HBO Max, not to be confused with the other Max. Max is very confusing. They're releasing their own, basically there is now a state-mandated messaging app that will be put on all phones and devices mandatorily by the government. And this has been developed by VK, which is a Kremlin-controlled tech company that created the social network vContact, which is very popular in particularly Europe and Eastern Europe. So interesting, right? I think that the use of the mobile phone as a tool of control, how many things can we say about that? We can talk about mass surveillance through mobile phones, NSA data collection in the US. We can talk about how they rewire our brains in ways that are so pernicious that the people who make these things refuse to let their kids use them. We can talk about the fact that your position can be triangulated with them easily, the fact that other people's positions can be triangulated with them easily. Or, for instance, one thing that people don't know much about is within the last decade, India has instituted a system to get rid of tips or bribery. In India, if you've ever been to India, you know that it's a bakshish society, which means if you want to get anything done in India, you have to, shall we say, tip up front, right? In the West, or in America at least, in America, it is considered polite and customary to tip 10 to 20% for jobs like waiting, haircutting, service jobs. If somebody is serving you in a service job, it is considered polite and it is socially unacceptable not to tip. It's considered part of the social contract. In India and many other countries, it's up front. It's like, let's see the money up front, okay? Because I don't trust that you're going to give it to me at the end. So it's like, no one will. You want to ride? Okay, you got to throw in some extra money, right? The Indian government doesn't like that because they don't get to take taxes out of that, because it's just paper currency passed off by hand. Governments don't like paper currency. They love the idea of everyone banking online. They love the idea of even things like Bitcoin, which is erroneously called cryptocurrency, where that could kind of be further from the truth, since every single transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain is recorded for all eternity for everyone who has access to Bitcoin. So I think they love the ideas of these things because they can control them. And so the phone also, this is something to look out for. Does the government have total control over your ability to message? Do they have total control over your ability to do payments? Well, in the West we have soft power, so it's more of a around the edges rather than overt control. But one thing that you can, so for instance, we have silent NSA data collection instead of a literal government mandated app that you have to communicate on, in which all conversations are saved. But when you look at authoritarian countries, ones that are more authoritarian, you can see what, again, it's like this 120 Days of Sodom thing is. You can see what they want, right? And you can see what might be coming to America or other countries in a more covert way, because we're very, very good at getting the same objectives accomplished, but in a soft power way, in a misdirection way, in a gaslighting way, in a neurolinguistic programming way, in a, the magician always is misdirecting you, so you're not seeing how he's doing the trick. That's the same way. So we got that going on. And then a couple other interesting things. Yeah, this will be the last thing, and then I'll answer the super chat, or if anyone else wants to throw one in. This is cool. Immortal stars have an elixir of youth, dark matter. If you want to live forever, the answer is dark matter. This is wild. By the way, they just released new pictures of the universe like this that you can zoom in on this type of thing 1,000 times, and it shows that the universe is an infinite expanse of jeweled galaxies, jeweled spiral galaxies extending into infinity. It's like if you look at a picture of the universe that we now have, it's as it, like what we're looking at, what you end up looking at is it's like stars, a field of stars, but every star is a spiral galaxy. It's wild. It's wild. But anyways, oh, I have to pay to access it. But apparently, the universe has an anti-aging secret. Dark matter, the mysterious stuff that holds galaxies together, might also grant stars immortality. Something to look into. Apparently, nature won't let me find out more about that. Okay, let's answer. We have one super chat, and then I am going to jump off. This was a 1-hour stream. I think this went well. So this is your last chance to get a super chat in. Eternal Serenity says, advice on becoming a public face of the occult, especially if one's practice involves what some would consider demonic or have undue prejudice against. Basically, is it worth it, or is anonymity valuable? I tell everyone who asks me this question, don't make my mistake. It is a much more powerful position to not be public about the occult. It really is much more powerful to keep it quiet. Of course, I've ended up in the position of that I'm this person that talks about it for a living. But unless you want to make it your job, which by the way I don't recommend at all, because it's like you're saying, people have undue prejudice against. Think about how much prejudice people have had against me in my entire life. It's like I am 43 and I still can barely tell people what I do for a living. Okay, we got something going on here. I'm going to have to end the stream, but I advise you keep it anonymous. Thank you.